We have another exciting guest here with us today, and I am really excited to introduce you to the Tech and Space Leader Show, where we learn lessons from leading founders and next gen leaders. I am your host, Lisa Dreher, and I'm really excited to introduce our guest for today, Rick Ward. He is the founder and CTO of OrbitsEdge. Welcome to the show, Rick.
It's great to be here. This has been the third or maybe fourth time, and it's been fun.
Absolutely. We're really excited to find out about all that has been happening with OrbitsEdge. Maybe we can start, though, by having you give us a little bit of background on yourself and OrbitsEdge.
Yeah, sure. So my first space job was with a asteroid mining company called Deep Space Industries, and my big takeaway from that was the level of compute we have for the space industry today is not enough for autonomy. And I felt that was the next big thing, because anything that involves more complicated operations than taking pictures or data relay, communications relay, it's getting into moving atoms, and that a lot of things can go wrong in a short amount of time when you start moving atoms, as opposed to photons. And I felt that the level of compute we have in the space industry is just not going to get there, period. And we had to have a sustainable way to take the levels of compute that we're used to in robotics here on the ground and put them in space. So that's the premise of OrbitsEdge, how to do that.
Excellent. Okay, so I mean, you have been working on this for quite some time. What originally inspired you? Well, you kind of actually already talked about what inspired you to found OrbitsEdge. Where have you gotten to now? So
Well,
it's been a number of years. Where have what progress has been made?
so when we first started having conversations, and I'm seeing other companies that are focused on space-based compute follow the same basic path. When we first started doing this, our first product was going to be about 1,000 watts of power consumption. And after talking to lots of potential customers, uh, I heard the same thing enough times that eventually it sank in. And that was, my whole power budget is 500 watts or 1,000 watts or whatever. I don't have enough power to give a computer that much. Also, I don't have the size and mass to give to a computer that much. So we started looking at what we can do that is smaller, that is more power efficient,
Hmm.
that is more accessible. So I guess you'd say a higher total addressable market. And that drove us to the product that we're going to fly in the spring, which is about 10 watts of total power consumption for 15 trillion operations per second of computing power. We've also got a roadmap for the same power consumption with about 5 times the computation, that we're going to start working on this fall, so we can field it by next summer.
Wow.
So that's really interesting. The big thing is we started out with a cloud focused approach, and then we realized that edge is the way to get there. Edge is something that provides, it's not just about the business case for tomorrow, it's also about the business case for today. So Edge gives us a customer base that already exists, customers that we can grow into, and also it lets us incrementally but also rapidly build the capability set that will carry us to cloud computing later on.
Got it. When you talk about the capabilities of this smaller, lower powered computer solution, how does that compare to, I don't know, like a PC or a server or a smartphone? Can you give us some context?
So so this computer is its power, its computational output is measured as about 15 trillion operations per second. So you're going to find that is a little bit under like little bit under half of what you get for an NVIDIA Jetson AGX. So that's pretty good. It'll run most. So it'll run AI. It'll run most of the telemetry based models. So if you're doing something like system health monitoring or something like that, it'll do that, and it'll run a lot of the mid range vision based models. The computer that we're flying is actually intended for autonomous drone operations, so it's capable of handling simultaneous inputs from up to 8 cameras. So we're looking at that as a good entry point for a first product. But to give you a little background, when I talk to space companies, they ask, well, how much computing power you have? I've had multiple say, how many MOPS is that? And MOPS, if you remember back to the 90s and the aughts, that's when you're talking about millions of operations per second. And this is in the trillions of operations per second. And it's quite a different paradigm. You're talking, several zeros more powerful than what is commonly considered state of the art for the space industry. As an example, the Mars Perseverance rover has a pair of PowerPC 750s, RAD 750s that derive from the PowerPC 750, which is actually a drop in the standard stats. But those came out in the mid 90s, and that's what's on the Mars Perseverance rover. As a counterpoint, the helicopter Ingenuity ran off of a Snapdragon processor, a Qualcomm cell phone processor. So it's a very different world. It is absolute night and day.
Wow. Okay. I think that gives us some really good context.
Yeah.
So congratulations, you're flying your first space flight, right? And so what are some of the things that are going to happen during that space flight? What sort of use cases will that space flight support?
So we actually had a few opportunities to fly that we did not take because they didn't meet the mission parameters that we really wanted to do to validate this.
Right.
So we could have done like some CubeSat stuff. We could have done some high altitude stuff. But for our customers, what they really want to know is not just does it turn on, but does it operate for, months and years and whatnot.
Right.
How can we trust this for a mission? So we could have done, hey, we're going to load some benchmarks and just run the benchmarks every week, and it'll be, kind of boring. But we didn't want to do that. We wanted to show what kind of real world utility you could get out of a demo mission. And we wanted to also had the desire to help pay for the mission by having other people pay us for services. So we brought in what we called a digital payload platform, digital payload service, where we have other companies, many of whom are startups, but not all, that wanted to fly either AI agents or analytics packages or do cool stuff on the spacecraft, on our flight, on our demo flight. And we've had some really good responses from that. So we've got a company that's doing communications window optimization. We've got a couple of different companies that are doing various things with radiation detectors and radiation monitoring and whatnot. We've got another company that's really cool, forest fire detection live on the spacecraft. So that's a common thing, but it's always done. You get all the pictures down to the ground, and then the agent looks over each and every picture once it's on the ground. This eliminates that transport step. So instead of saying I can look at this series of pictures, it's literally everything that is downstream of the spacecraft. So you don't have to send down a full everything. You just do it right there, and you're like, you look at a 1,000-mile swath and you see one or two fires or whatever, you crop those out and send them to the appropriate people, and
Yeah.
you can really reduce the amount of time between the event happening or the detection of the event and getting the information that it's happening to the right person. So that's a really cool one. We're also doing some spacecraft system health monitoring. So taking a lot of telemetry, that is a capability that we can really grow into something tremendously useful, because it starts out with monitoring, but it ends up with semi-autonomous control of the spacecraft itself. And instead of, like, you notice that there's some sort of a power spike in some sort of a system, not so much that it burns it out, but you can figure out what's the cause of that, and you can take corrective actions, and you can prevent damage to the spacecraft over time. That's going to be super important, especially on long duration missions.
Right.
You can, because there's a lot of times where there is some sort of an off nominal readout. Something is off nominal months before you actually get a hard failure. And
Yeah.
having something that's right there is really helpful for that.
Hmm.
There's also the thing that everybody's been talking about. There's the um, tennis shoe design aspect. Uh,
Right.
we're going to run multiple AI agents to do everything from design the shoe to design the sole of the shoe to design the artwork that gets stuck on the shoe, and maybe even design the very concept of, like, the initial sketches that inspire the shoe. With that, we're also going to add, um, so we have some radiation detectors, and you can put in a random number generator into your generative AI. We're not going to do random numbers. We're going to use numbers that come directly from the radiation detectors. So the space weather today is going to have an influence on the designs that go into the shoot. So it's going to be like a little bit of an encapsulation of what the weather's like. And I mean, we're in a solar maximum right now, so
Yeah.
I'm expecting that the weather we encounter in spring, summer, fall, winter of 26 is going to be a little bit spicy. So
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So, do you still have, I guess, compute capabilities available to potentially take on additional, I guess, programs, or are you guys at capacity for this next space flight?
actually, the way we're doing this is most of the agents are not going to be running 24/7. So it's a function of time as well as resources.
Okay.
So as long as so there might be some that are like, hey, we need to run every day for 10 minutes per orbit or something like that, or we need, assuming the orbit's like 90,
Right.
or somebody might say we need to run once a week, or we need to run once a month, or we need to run once, period. That's it. Like that's the lowest tier. um, but no, we have more availability. It's we have lots of storage, so that's not going to be an issue. We have lots of computational capability, so we're definitely interested in more digital payloads. So if you're a company, startup, or established, and you want to get some heritage on an AI agent in space, or some sort of analytics, or you want to demonstrate something that is possible still, that is, we're still onboarding, so there's room for more customers. We also will be able to onboard customers post launch, so that's interesting. The major downside to that is the the upload costs and the upload difficulties are significantly higher than the download.
Hmm.
So if you've got, like, hey, we need to upload a gig of whatever, um, that's going to be non-trivial.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so
100
better to plan
megs.
ahead.
Yes.
Okay, great. When you talk about these computing capabilities and I guess instituting and leveraging AI to support some of these initiatives, how does this support things like proximity operations and in-space manufacturing, for example?
Very, very good question. Those happen to tie directly into some of the stuff we've been talking about. Uh,
Right.
so for the business model of today, we're looking at lots of Earth observation stuff. So basically, we can take a lot of the AI agents, a lot of the analytics packages that occur here on the ground, and put them right next to the camera. So that seems fairly straightforward. The next thing is proximity operations, and that is you can do it by command lines and direct control if you do it, a couple of times a year and you've got plenty of time to do it. If you want to do it, 100 times a year, it gets cumbersome and uh, much slower than it should be. So,
Hmm.
what we can do is enact semi autonomy, which basically means we use like a waypoint system with a series of AI agents. And each agent is responsible for, let's say, 20 kilometers to 2 kilometers or something like that. And then it navigates to that point. It reaches a certain window threshold and it says, hey, I'm within this degree of accuracy of the ideal point. Do I have permission to continue to the next waypoint? If you don't respond by such and such time, such and such point, I will have to, hit the brakes or something, which costs you propulsion.
Right.
Um, so you can basically have this waypoint permission paradigm that lets you do the operation, hand over as much of it as you're comfortable with to the spacecraft itself, and you become more of a supervisor, more of a supervisor.
Yeah.
And if you get to like, okay, I don't want the agent to be doing from 10 meters in, for instance. I don't want to, once it hits 10 meters, I want to have direct control on that. Then we can work with that. We can get you to that point, and um, you can take over from there. And then it's just a matter of like how much heritage and time and total operations we've done to build up confidence and build up that capability. And it's a question of how comfortable the customer is with handing over more control over time to the system. So
Right.
that's cool. Additionally, there's room for us to optimize the compute hardware for the different jobs. So, for instance, the Earth observation analytics, those guys probably want a big fat database. So that sounds like a lot of storage. Whereas the proximity operations guys, they don't necessarily need that, but they probably want a lot of RAM. So
Right.
it's a matter of like how you optimize the board with what different chips are populated on it and what capability that optimizes for. Now, in terms of pharmaceuticals or in space manufacturing, um, that's really cool. So some of it, like if you're building a satellite out of flat packs or something like that, that's basically prox ops. That is prox ops with manipulation. So looking at things like protein synthesis or anything involving crystallography, I've spoken with some of the people who are working in this field, and one of the things that hit me was in order to get the protein synthesis right, you spend a lot of time looking through a microscope. So if you're doing that, a lot of what you're doing is optimizing for it looks like the process is going right. It looks like the process is finished. And that's how you manipulate the various inputs and the processes. It's a lot like cooking. I mean, it's a a chef or a baker is going to know how the cake looks,
Right.
and you can just get a much better cake with somebody who knows how it's supposed to look and smell at various phases, and takes it out of the oven at the right time, as opposed to someone with no senses, no sensory capabilities and a stopwatch.
Right.
So that's what we can do. We can do vision agents for those purposes. And the vision agents can be trained with a sufficiently large data set to do this process. And they can also improve over time. Because one of the big things is, so let's say that I take up, whatever 1 or 100 kilos of precursor chemicals, and I need the thing back. It's going to cost me, potentially several $1,000,000 to get it up and back safely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To have that, the difference between a 50%, 80%, and 90% success rate, that is a huge difference in whether or not your venture was profitable. So whatever you can do to improve the success rate, especially if you can do it faster, if you can reliably do it faster, well, now you've got a situation where the spacecraft you do the work on, maybe you've gone from 10 batches a year to 20 batches a year. That's a big deal.
Indeed.
So
Indeed.
we can help with that.
Excellent. Okay. Wow. So an incredibly broad range of use cases are basically enabled by OrbitsEdge and this compute that you're putting out into space. So, if somebody wants to learn more about OrbitsEdge or take advantage of some of that compute that you still have available on the spring space flight, what should they do?
Well, if they're watching it on LinkedIn, they can go to our page. They can also talk to me, or they can go to our website, which will also feature this conversation.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Rick. We really appreciate it. And it's been incredibly exciting to learn about all of the things that OrbitsEdge is working on. And we definitely look forward to having you back again.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. I'd like to talk, sometime around launch time, and definitely want to talk sometime after launch.
Absolutely.
That's going to be a lot of fun.
Okay, yeah. So, do you get a pair of those scintillate shoes as well?
I plan on wearing them pretty much everywhere. Anytime I go to a space thing, I've gone from the straight up dress shoes to now I'm doing the tennis shoes that look like dress shoes, kind of, sort of.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to doing like the bouncy marshmallow tennis shoes in OrbitsEdge blue or light blue or dark blue, whatever it is. I haven't decided yet, but I'm looking forward to wearing those basically everywhere.
Excellent. I can't wait to see you wearing them.
And they may even have the OrbitsEdge logo.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you so much for being here. And we look forward to learning what happens during the space flight as well. And I do want to take a moment to thank GuideForce for hosting these sessions. To learn more about GuideForce, you can visit guideforce.com. And we'll see you next time on the Tech and Space Leader Show.